The first anonymous letter appeared in my locker on an ordinary Tuesday morning in September, tucked between my calculus textbook and a half-eaten granola bar I'd forgotten about last week. At first, I thought it was just another notification from the student council. They had this annoying habit of stuffing everyone's lockers with reminders about upcoming events. But this was different. The envelope was made of cream-colored paper, expensive-looking, with my name Sophie Chen written in elegant calligraphy. I glanced around the crowded hallway of Riverside High, wondering if anyone was watching me. But it was just the usual morning chaos. Freshmen scrambling to find their classrooms, the basketball team horsing around near the water fountain, and my best friend Emma was nowhere in sight. Perfect. I didn't need her squealing about this and turning it into some grand romantic conspiracy. With slightly trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. The letter inside was handwritten on matching cream paper, the penmanship neat, but distinctively masculine. Asterisk, dear Sophie, asterisk, asterisk, I've watched you solve differential equations in calculus class with the same ease that most people breathe. Your mind is a beautiful maze I wish I could get lost in. The way your forehead crinkles when you're deep in thought, the slight smile that plays on your lips when you figure out a particularly challenging problem, these little moments have become the highlights of my day. Asterisk. Asterisk, I know this might seem strange or even creepy, but I promise I'm not a stalker. I'm just someone who has admired you from afar for too long, and silence has become unbearable. Asterisk. Asterisk, yours truly, asterisk, asterisk, an admirer, asterisk. I read it 3 times, my heart doing weird little flips in my chest. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as a prank, anonymous love letters. In 2024, who even does that anymore? But there was something about the sincerity in those words that felt real, too real. What's that you're reading so intensely? I nearly jumped out of my skin at the sound of that familiar, irritating voice. James Parker, of course. He always had a talent for showing up at the worst possible moments. I quickly stuffed the letter into my jacket pocket, turning to face my daily tormentor. James stood there with his usual smirk, dark hair artfully messy, wearing that stupid varsity jacket he never seemed to take off. As captain of the debate team and my primary competition for valedictorian, he'd made it his mission to challenge every single one of my achievements since freshman year. None of your business, Parker, I snapped, slamming my locker shut with perhaps more force than necessary. He raised an eyebrow, that infuriating smirk widening. Touchy this morning, aren't we, Chen? Don't tell me you're still bitter about losing that mock trial competition last week. I felt my cheeks heat up. The mock trial. He'd beaten me by a single point, and only because he'd pulled out some obscure legal precedent that nobody else had thought to research. It was exactly the kind of overthinking, show-off move that made James Parker insufferable. Unlike some people, I said, hoisting my backpack onto my shoulder, I don't spend my time dwelling on past victories or defeats. I'm too busy actually learning. Is that what you call it? He fell into step beside me as I headed toward first period AP Literature. Because from where I'm standing, it looks more like you're trying to memorize every textbook in existence without actually understanding the practical applications, says the guy who turned a simple debate about environmental policy into a 30-minute dissertation on ancient Roman aqueducts. Hey, those aqueducts were directly relevant to the discussion of sustainable water management systems. I rolled my eyes, trying to ignore how his presence seemed to fill up the entire hallway. James Parker had this annoying ability to command attention without even trying. It wasn't just his height, though being 6'2" certainly helped. It was something in the way he carried himself, with that endless confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. You know what your problem is, Chen? He continued, apparently not deterred by my obvious desire to end this conversation. You're too rigid, too focused on rules and structures. Sometimes the best solutions come from thinking outside the box, and sometimes, I countered, people use thinking outside the box as an excuse for not doing proper research and preparation. We reached my classroom door, and I turned to face him, ready to deliver a final verbal jab, only to find him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For a moment, the usual antagonism in his dark eyes seemed to shift into something else, something that made my stomach do a strange little flip. But before I could analyze it further, Emma appeared, grabbing my arm and pulling me into the classroom with an excited, "Sophie, you will not believe what just happened in the parking lot." As Emma launched into a dramatic retelling of some senior drama, I found my hand drifting to the letter in my pocket. Who could have written it? The universe of possibilities seemed both exciting and terrifying. But one thing I knew for certain, it couldn't be James Parker. The guy could barely string together a compliment without turning it into an insult. Little did I know, this was just the first letter of many, and my life was about to become significantly more complicated. Throughout AP Literature, I couldn't focus on our discussion of Pride and Prejudice. The letter kept drawing my attention like a magnet. Its words were playing in my mind. My admirer had mentioned calculus class, which meant they had to be in my advanced calc section. I found myself mentally cataloging all the male students in that class. There was Alex Thompson, the quiet band kid who sat in the back, Marcus Way, president of the chess club, Chris Rodriguez, who was always doodling in his notebook instead of taking notes, and, unfortunately, James Parker, who sat 2 rows behind me and seemed to derive great pleasure from pointing out the rare occasions when I made computational errors. During lunch, Emma noticed my distraction and practically wrestled the letter out of my hands. Her squeal of delight drew the attention of half the cafeteria. "Oh, my God," she read through it twice, her grin growing wider with each word. "Sophie, this is literally the most romantic thing I've ever seen, and the handwriting, it's gorgeous. Whoever wrote this must have taken calligraphy classes or something." "Keep your voice down," I hissed, glancing around nervously. "I don't want the whole school knowing about this." "Too late," said a dry voice behind me. Emma's squealing could probably be heard in the next county. I turned to find Lily Park sliding into the seat next to me, her camera hanging around her neck as usual. As head photographer for the school newspaper, Lily had an uncanny ability to show up whenever something interesting was happening. "It's not that big a deal," I insisted, trying to snatch the letter back from Emma, who held it out of reach with surprising agility. "Not a big deal." Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sophie, you've received an anonymous love letter that could have come straight out of a Jane Austen novel. This is the biggest deal in the history of deals." "Speaking of deals," Lily said, adjusting her glasses, "did you guys hear about the drama in the student council? Apparently, James Parker's pushing to change the format of this year's academic decathlon. I groaned. "Can we go 5 minutes without talking about James Parker? He's already taking up too much space in my life." Emma and Lily exchanged a look that I pretended not to notice. They had this ridiculous theory that the reason James and I fought so much was because of unresolved sexual tension. I told them repeatedly that the only tension between James and me was the normal kind that exists between 2 highly competitive people who happen to excel in the same areas. "All I'm saying," Lily continued, "is that he might have a point about making the competition more interactive. The current format is pretty stale." "The current format works perfectly fine," I argued. "It's fair, it's structured, and it allows participants to demonstrate their knowledge across multiple subjects." "See," Emma pointed her fork at me. "This is exactly why you need some romance in your life. You're turning into a human textbook. I opened my mouth to protest, but at that moment, my phone buzzed with a notification from the debate team group chat. James had just posted a link to an article about revolutionary education methods, with the comment, "Food for thought for those stuck in the stone age of academic competition formats." I knew the winking emoji was aimed at me. He'd probably posted it right after hearing about my opposition to his changes. That was so typically James, always having to have the last word, always pushing my buttons. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes, club meetings, and trying to avoid James Parker's attempts to engage me in another debate about the academic decathlon. By the time I got home, I was exhausted but couldn't stop thinking about the letter. I pulled it out again, studying the handwriting, looking for clues I might have missed. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a tiny mathematical symbol hidden in the bottom corner of the paper. It was the Greek letter phi, drawn so small it was barely visible. The golden ratio? Was it a signature, a clue? Or was I reading too much into this? I spent half the night working on my calculus homework, but my mind kept wandering to the mystery admirer. Part of me was flattered, even excited, but another part was wary. In an age of social media and instant messaging, who would choose to communicate through handwritten letters? As I finally drifted off to sleep, my dreams were a confused jumble of cream-colored envelopes, mathematical symbols, and dark eyes with an unreadable expression. I had no idea that this was just the beginning of a story that would turn my carefully ordered world upside down. The next morning, I arrived at school early, determined to catch up on some student council work before classes started. The hallways were nearly empty, quiet in a way they never were during regular hours. I was so focused on my phone, reading through email updates about the upcoming fundraiser, that I almost missed it. Another cream-colored envelope peeking out from the vent of my locker. My heart started racing as I quickly opened my locker and retrieved the letter. Same expensive paper, same elegant handwriting. Asterisk, dear Sophie, asterisk yesterday. I watched you argue with someone about the proper way to analyze literary themes. Your passion was breathtaking. You have this fire inside you when you read defending your ideas. It's like watching a star being born, even when I disagree with your points, which, I must admit, happens more often than you'd probably appreciate. I can't help but admire the brilliance of your mind. Asterisk, I wonder if you know how your eyes light up when you're making a particularly complex argument, or how you have this habit of tucking your hair behind your ear when you're about to deliver your knockout point. These little details have become a collection of precious moments I carry with me. Asterisk, yours truly, asterisk an admirer, asterisk PS, did you find my first signature? Here's another puzzle for you to solve. The sum of our first meaningful interaction can be expressed as an irrational number that appears frequently in nature. Asterisk, I was still staring at the letter, trying to decipher the meaning of the postscript, when I heard footsteps approaching. I quickly shoved the letter into my bag, but not quite fast enough. 2 days in a row, James Parker's voice came from behind me. Either you've developed a sudden interest in early morning studying, or something interesting is happening at locker 1275. I turned to face him, noting with annoyance that he looked unfairly awake and put together for this early hour. Don't you have somewhere else to be? Like practicing your debate poses in the bathroom mirror. He laughed, and I hated how the sound made my stomach flutter. As entertaining as that sounds, I'm actually here for debate team business. We need to discuss the format for next week's practice session. Fine, I sighed, closing my locker. But make it quick. I have work to do. As we walked toward the debate team room, I couldn't help but notice that James seemed different this morning, less antagonistic, More thoughtful. He kept glancing at me when he thought I wasn't looking, and there was something almost gentle in his expression. But then he started arguing about his proposed changes to the practice format, and any momentary softness vanished in the heat of our usual verbal sparring. By the time first period started, I'd almost forgotten about the letter, too busy defending my position against James's increasingly ridiculous suggestions. Almost, but not quite. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice was starting to wonder, what if the biggest mystery in my life was hiding in plain sight? By the end of the week, I had received 5 letters, each more intriguing than the last. They appeared like clockwork, always in my locker first thing in the morning, always on the same cream-colored paper. I'd started keeping them in a special folder, along with notes about the mathematical puzzles and clues hidden within each one. The 3rd letter had contained a reference to the Fibonacci sequence, the 4th mentioned Euler's number, and the 5th included a complex origami pattern that, when folded correctly, revealed a perfect geometric design. Whoever my admirer was, they clearly shared my love for mathematical beauty. "You're obsessing," Emma declared during our Friday study session in the library. She was watching me analyze the latest letter for the 3rd time that day. "Just admit it, you're totally falling for this mystery guy." "I'm not obsessing," I protested, though the dark circles under my eyes from staying up late solving the puzzles probably told a different story. "I'm just appreciating the intellectual effort." "Aha." Emma rolled her eyes. "That's why you've been carrying around that folder like it contains state secrets." Speaking of secrets, Lily chimed in, lowering her voice. "I think I might have a lead on your admirer." I tried not to look too eager. "Oh well, I was developing some photos for the school paper yesterday, and I noticed something interesting. Remember that calligraphy club that disbanded last year? They kept all their old materials in the art room storage closet, including paper that looks exactly like what your letters are written on." My heart started racing. "So my admirer has access to the art room." "More specifically," Lily continued, "they would need to have a key. And you know who has after-hours access to all the special resource rooms?" "Student council members," Emma and I said in unison. I mentally ran through the list of male student council members. There weren't many. Most guys at our school considered student government uncool. There was Marcus from the chess club, but I'd already ruled him out because he wasn't in my calculus class. Then there was Chris Rodriguez, but he'd been dating the same girl since freshman year. And of course, there was ... Don't even say it, I warned as Emma opened her mouth with a gleam in her eye. I wasn't going to say anything. She held up her hands innocently. "Just because James Parker happens to be on the student council and in your calculus class, and is obviously smart enough to come up with those mathematical puzzles ... double quotes. Stop." I gathered my books with more force than necessary. "James Parker is not my secret admirer. He can barely stand to be in the same room as me. Is that why he always sits next to you in student council meetings?" Lily asked innocently. "And volunteers to be your partner in debate practice. And somehow manages to run into you between every class. Those are all coincidences driven by our unfortunately overlapping academic interests," I insisted. "Besides, James would never do something this ... romantic. He's all about direct confrontation and showing off." As if summoned by our discussion, a familiar voice called out, "Shen, just the person I was looking for." I turned to see James striding toward our table, his debate team folder in hand. Something about the way the afternoon sunlight streaming through the library windows caught his dark hair made my breath catch for a moment. I quickly attributed it to anxiety about whatever new argument he was about to start. "Parker," I acknowledged coolly. "What crisis have you manufactured today?" He dropped into the chair next to me, either not noticing or choosing to ignore my sarcasm. The regional debate tournament next month, they've changed the format. We need to completely revise our preparation strategy. I groaned. Please tell me you're joking. Would I joke about debate strategy? He pulled out a stack of papers covered in his neat handwriting. Look, they're introducing a new spontaneous response section. Teams will have to ... double quotes. As James launched into an explanation of the new rules, I found myself distracted by his handwriting. There was something about it that seemed ... familiar, but before I could analyze it further, he shifted the papers, and I caught a whiff of his cologne, a subtle, spicy scent that made me think of autumn leaves, and ... I mentally shook myself. What was wrong with me? This was James Parker, my academic nemesis, not some romantic prospect. I forced myself to focus on what he was saying about the tournament. So I think we should meet this weekend to practice, he finished, looking at me expectantly. This weekend. I blinked. I can't. I have ... plans. He raised an eyebrow skeptically. More important than preparing for the biggest debate tournament of the year. Yes, actually, I lifted my chin defiantly. I'm helping my mom with a special dinner party on Saturday, and on Sunday, I'm meeting Emma for our weekly study session. Something flickered in his eyes, disappointment, but his voice remained casual as he said, well, we could meet after your study session, say, around 4 p.m. I glanced at Emma and Lily, who were watching our exchange with poorly concealed amusement. Fine, but only for 2 hours max. Great. He stood up, gathering his papers. We can meet at the Bean Cafe. Their chai tea lattes are still your favorite, right? I stared at him. How did you know that? A slight flush colored his cheeks. Lucky guess. See you Sunday, Chen. As he walked away, Emma let out a low whistle. Still think he's not paying attention to you. Shut up, I muttered, but I could feel my own face heating up. The next morning, another letter was waiting in my locker. This one was different. Instead of philosophical musings or mathematical puzzles, it contained a poem. Asterisk in the space between arguments, asterisk, asterisk, where silence holds its breath, asterisk, asterisk, I count the moments like equations, asterisk, asterisk, each variable a step closer to truth, asterisk, asterisk, your fierce intelligence burns, asterisk, asterisk, brighter than any star I've studied, asterisk, asterisk, and I wonder if you know, asterisk, asterisk, that every debate is really a love song, asterisk, asterisk in disguise, asterisk. Below the poem was another clue. Asterisk, the distance between us can be measured in the steps from the library's astronomy section to the advanced calculus shelf. Count them next time you're there, asterisk. I spent my free period in the library, counting steps between those specific shelves, 26. But what did that mean? I was so absorbed in trying to decode the message that I almost ran straight into James as I rounded the corner of the calculus section. Careful there, Chen. He steadied me with a hand on my arm, though I have to say, it's refreshing to see you so focused on something other than beating me in debate. I'm always focused on multiple things, I retorted, trying to ignore the lingering warmth where his hand had touched me. Some of us can actually multitask. He smiled, not his usual smirk, but something softer. Oh, I'm well aware of your capabilities. That's what makes you such an interesting opponent. For a moment, we just stood there, surrounded by books and silence, and I felt something shift in the air between us. James opened his mouth as if to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. Well, he cleared his throat. I should get going. Debate team meeting. Right. I nodded. See you Sunday. As I watched him walk away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something obvious. The letters, the clues. James's strange behavior lately. It was like looking at a complex equation where all the variables were there, but I couldn't quite see how they connected. That evening, I spread all 6 letters out on my desk, looking for patterns I might have missed. The handwriting was consistently elegant, but there were subtle variations, as if the writer sometimes got caught up in emotion and forgot to maintain the perfect calligraphy. The mathematical references were sophisticated but playful, showing not just knowledge, but a genuine love for the subject. My phone buzzed with a text from James. For tomorrow, bring your notes from last month's Lincoln-Douglas debate. I have a theory about how we can adapt that strategy for the new format. I smiled despite myself, then immediately frowned at my own reaction. Since when did messages from James Parker make me smile? This whole situation was making me question everything I thought I knew about my feelings. As I got ready for bed, I remembered something my mother once told me about love. Sometimes the hardest equations to solve are the ones where the answer has been staring you in the face all along. I fell asleep thinking about that, and dreamed of cream-colored paper turning into butterflies, mathematical symbols dancing through the air, and dark eyes that held secrets I was only beginning to understand. The next day was Saturday, and for the first time since the letters began, there wasn't one waiting in my locker. I told myself I wasn't disappointed. After all, I'd only come to school for the morning student council meeting. But as I sat through discussions about homecoming decorations and fundraising goals, I found myself stealing glances at James, who was unusually quiet. He caught me looking once and held my gaze for a moment too long, making my heart do that weird flippy thing again. What was happening to me? This was James Parker, annoying, arrogant, infuriating James Parker. The guy who'd once spent an entire debate session arguing that Romeo and Juliet was actually a satirical comedy. The guy who who somehow knew my favorite tea, who always seemed to be around when I needed a challenging intellectual conversation, who looked at me sometimes like like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Sophie, Emma's voice snapped me back to reality. The meeting had ended, and people were packing up their things. You okay? You looked like you were having some kind of epiphany. I'm fine, I said quickly, gathering my papers. Just thinking about debate stuff. But as I walked home in the crisp autumn air, my mind was spinning with possibilities I'd never allowed myself to consider before. The way James always pushed me to think differently, to defend my positions more thoroughly. The way he remembered little details about me that even my close friends sometimes forgot. The way he... No, I was being ridiculous, wasn't I? Sunday couldn't come fast enough. Sunday afternoon found me standing outside the Bean Cafe 15 minutes early, my heart racing for reasons I refused to acknowledge. Through the window, I could already see James at a corner table, 2 drinks in front of him. He was bent over some papers, absently running a hand through his dark hair in a way that made it even messier than usual. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door, the familiar scent of coffee and freshly baked cookies washing over me. James looked up as I approached, and something in his expression made my stomach do that annoying flip again. You're early, he said, pushing one of the drinks toward me. Chai tea latte, extra cinnamon. I slid into the seat across from him, trying to ignore how thoughtful it was that he'd remembered not just my drink preference, but the specific modification I always ordered. You're earlier. Well, some of us take debate preparation seriously, he smirked, but there was no real bite to his words. I've been reviewing our past performances, and I think I've found a pattern we can exploit for the new format. As he launched into his analysis, I found myself watching his hands as they moved across the papers, noting how his handwriting shifted from neat to messy depending on how excited he got about a particular point. There was something about the way the letters flowed. Sophie, are you even listening? I snapped back to attention, feeling my cheeks heat up. Of course I am. You were talking about incorporating more spontaneous elements into our structured responses. He studied me for a moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Actually, I was talking about the importance of maintaining eye contact with the judges, but nice try. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. What's going on with you lately? You seem distracted. Nothing's going on, I said too quickly. I'm just tired. Tired, he repeated skeptically. You, Sophie Chen, who once participated in a 12-hour debate marathon while having the flu, are too tired to focus on tournament prep. Maybe I'm tired of always having to be perfectly focused, I snapped, surprising both of us with the emotion in my voice. Maybe I'm tired of everything having to be about competition and winning and being the best. James was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentler than I'd ever heard it. Is that what you think this is about? Winning, isn't it? Isn't that what everything's about with us? No, he said simply. It's about challenge, growth, pushing each other to be better. He paused, then added softly, at least, that's what it's always been about for me. Something in his tone made me look up, and I found him watching me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. For a moment, I could almost imagine that he was the one writing those letters, that all our arguments and competitions were just his way of. The thought was too dangerous to complete. We should focus on the tournament, I said, pulling one of the papers toward me. But my hand was shaking slightly, and I knocked over my half-empty cup. Hot tea splashed across the table, soaking the papers. I've got it, James said quickly, grabbing napkins. As we both reached for the wet papers, our hands brushed, and I felt a jolt of electricity shoot up my arm. We froze, hands touching, papers forgotten. Sophie, James began, his voice hoarse. But before he could finish, my phone buzzed loudly, breaking the moment. It was Emma. 911. Need you ASAP, major crisis with the homecoming committee. I jumped up, gathering my things with trembling hands. I have to go. Emergency student council thing. Sophie, wait. But I was already hurrying toward the door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The emergency turned out to be a minor disagreement about balloon colors for the homecoming dance. I strongly suspected Emma had manufactured the crisis after I texted her earlier about meeting James, but I couldn't decide if I was grateful for the rescue or annoyed at the interruption. Monday morning, I found not one but two letters in my locker. The first was on the usual cream-colored paper. Asterisk, dear Sophie, asterisk. Sometimes I wonder if you can feel it too. This electric current that runs between us whenever we're close. Do you notice how the world seems to hold its breath in those moments? How time slows down until it's just you and me, and all the words we're too afraid to say. Asterisk. Asterisk, I've been hiding behind these letters because I'm scared. Not of rejection, though that terrifies me too, but of changing what we have. Our dynamic is like a perfectly balanced equation, beautiful in its complexity, reliable in its patterns. What happens when we add a new variable? Asterisk. Asterisk, but I'm running out of paper and excuses. Soon, you'll know who I am, if you haven't figured it out already. And then we'll have to face what comes next. Asterisk. Asterisk, yours truly. Asterisk. Asterisk, an admirer. Asterisk. Asterisk, P.S. The answer to yesterday's puzzle was in front of you the whole time. Sometimes the simplest solution is the hardest to see. Asterisk. The second letter was different, written on plain notebook paper, the handwriting messier, more urgent. Asterisk Sophie, asterisk. Asterisk, I'm sorry about yesterday. I wanted to tell you everything, but the timing wasn't right. Or maybe I'm just a coward. Meet me in the library at lunch. Same spot as last time. Please. Asterisk. Asterisk, J asterisk. I stared at the two letters, my mind racing. The handwriting on the second note was James's normal writing. I'd seen it enough times on debate notes and student council minutes to recognize it instantly. But there was something about the flow of the letters, the way certain words curved. Earth to Sophie, Emma's voice made me jump. You're going to be late for first period. I quickly shoved both letters into my folder. Emma, I need you to do me a favor. Can you get into the art room during your free period? Sure, but why? I need you to check something in the storage closet. Look for. But I was interrupted by the arrival of James himself. Looking like he hadn't slept much, our eyes met, and the intensity of his gaze made me forget what I was saying. Chen, he nodded, his voice rough. About yesterday. Double quotes. I have to get to class, I said quickly, shutting my locker. But. I'll see you at lunch. Something like hope flickered across his face. Yeah, at lunch. The morning passed in a blur. During calculus, I could feel James's eyes on me from his seat to Rose's back, but I didn't dare turn around. My mind kept jumping between the two letters, comparing them, looking for patterns I might have missed. In art class, I finally had a chance to examine them side by side. The formal calligraphy of the admirer's letters was clearly different from James's normal handwriting, but there were similarities in the underlying structure, the way the Y's curved, the slight tilt to the F's, the spacing between words. Miss Chen, Mr. Roberts' voice startled me. Would you like to share with the class what's so fascinating about your notebook? I quickly tucked the letters away. No, sorry. Just taking notes. But as I tried to focus on the lesson about Renaissance perspective techniques, a memory surfaced. James, during a student council meeting last year, volunteering to help with the calligraphy for graduation certificates. My mom taught me when I was younger, he'd said, looking almost embarrassed about it. By the time lunch period arrived, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely open my locker. The astronomy section to the calculus shelf. 26 steps. The same number of letters in the alphabet. The same number of weeks since the school year started. The same number of times James and I had been paired for debate practice. I walked to the library on autopilot, my mind racing through months of interactions, seeing them in a completely new light. Every argument, every competition, every seemingly casual encounter, had they all been leading to this moment? James was already there, standing between the astronomy and calculus shelves, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. He was holding something in his hands, a cream-colored envelope. I can explain, he began, and suddenly, everything clicked into place. Time seemed to stop in that moment between the bookshelves. James stood before me, the cream-colored envelope trembling slightly in his hands, and I found myself cataloging all the little details I'd somehow missed before. The way his shoulders tensed when he was nervous, how his eyes held that same intense vulnerability I'd seen glimpses of in our recent encounters, the slight ink stain on his left thumb that matched the ones I'd noticed on some of the letters. Before you say anything, he began, his voice unusually hesitant, I need you to understand why I did it this way. Because you're a dramatic show-off who can't do anything the simple way. The words came out automatically, but without their usual bite. I was still trying to process everything, my mind racing through months of interactions, seeing them in an entirely new light. He laughed softly, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I now realized I'd come to find endearingly familiar. That's probably true. but also because I didn't know how else to tell you. Every time I tried to be direct, we'd end up arguing about debate strategies or academic competitions or, because that's what we do, I interrupted. That's who we are. We argue. We compete. We drive each other crazy. No, he said, taking a step closer. That's what we've been hiding behind. Every debate, every competition, every argument, they were all just excuses to interact with you, to challenge you, to see that fire in your eyes when you're passionate about something. I felt my breath catch. So all those times you deliberately provoked me ... double quotes. Were mostly because you're incredibly attractive when you're proving me wrong. Yeah, he smiled sheepishly. Though in my defense, your counter-arguments really did help improve my debate techniques. I can't believe this, I said, leaning against the bookshelf for support. All this time, you were the one writing those letters, the mathematical puzzles, the literary references, the philosophical questions ... double quotes. I needed you to see that there was more to us than just competition. He held out the envelope he was holding. This is the last one. I was going to put it in your locker tomorrow, but I think you should read it now. With slightly trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. The letter inside was written in his usual handwriting, not the careful calligraphy of the previous ones. Dear Sophie, I fell in love with you during our first debate freshman year. You were arguing about the importance of arts education in STEM-focused schools, and you used a mathematical proof to demonstrate the correlation between creative expression and problem-solving abilities. I'd never seen anyone combine logic and passion so beautifully. Since then, every interaction we've had has only made me fall deeper. You challenged me not just to be better, but to be more authentic, more thoughtful, more alive. Our arguments aren't just intellectual exercises, they're a dance, a form of communication all our own. I started writing these letters because I was afraid that being direct would ruin what we had. I thought if you knew how I felt, it would change the dynamic between us. But I realize now that I was wrong. What we have isn't fragile, it's the strongest thing I know. So here's the truth, without puzzles or poetry. I love your brilliant mind, your fierce determination, your unwavering principles. I love how you never back down from a challenge, how you see beauty in mathematical equations, how your whole face lights up when you're explaining something you're passionate about. I love arguing with you, debating with you, competing with you, but mostly, I just love you. Yours truly, and no longer anonymously, James. I looked up from the letter to find him watching me intently. His expression more vulnerable than I'd ever seen it. Say something, he whispered. Even if it's to tell me I'm an idiot for doing it this way. You are an idiot, I said, but I could feel tears threatening at the corners of my eyes. The biggest idiot in the history of idiots. Who spends months writing anonymous love letters when they could have just ... double quotes. Just what? He asked softly, stepping closer. Just told you that every time you prove me wrong in debate, I fall a little more in love with you. That I've been intentionally taking the opposite stance on issues just to see that look of determination in your eyes. That I cut him off by grabbing his debate team jacket and pulling him down to kiss him. For a moment, he seemed frozen in surprise, then his arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer. The letter crumpled between us as we kissed among the books that had witnessed so many of our arguments, our competitions, our slow journey to this moment. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, I couldn't help but laugh. Emma and Lily are never going to let us hear the end of this. They knew, James admitted, still holding me close. Well, Lily figured it out after she caught me sneaking into the art room for the paper. And Emma ... I think she knew before I did. That's why she kept manufacturing emergencies to get us in the same place. I realized. The student council crisis. The debate team emergency meetings ... double quotes. To be fair, some of those were real emergencies. You're not the easiest person to arrange coincidental meetings with. I punched his arm lightly, says the guy who spent months writing elaborate coded messages instead of just asking me out for coffee. Hey, I did ask you out for coffee yesterday, remember? He grinned. Though I guess running away in the middle of it wasn't the response I was hoping for. I was overwhelmed. I defended. You try maintaining your composure when you're starting to suspect that your academic nemesis is actually your secret admirer. Nemesis. He raised an eyebrow. Is that really how you saw me? I thought about it for a moment. No, I admitted. You are more like ... a constant challenge. Someone who always pushed me to think differently, to defend my positions more thoroughly, to ... double quotes. To step outside your comfort zone, he suggested, brushing a strand of hair from my face, to consider possibilities you hadn't allowed yourself to imagine before. You're doing it again, I accused. Being annoyingly perceptive. It's part of my charm. He smiled, then became serious. Sophie, I need to know ... are we okay? I mean, is this going to change everything between us? I pretended to consider it. Well, I suppose this means I'll have to find a new academic rival. Maybe Marcus from the chess club. He cut me off with another kiss, this one shorter, but no less intense. Not funny, Chen. I thought it was pretty funny, Parker. I smiled up at him. And no, this doesn't change everything. We're still going to argue and compete and drive each other crazy. We're just ... adding new variables to the equation. Speaking of equations, he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out another piece of paper, I have one more puzzle for you. But this time, I think you'll find the solution much more straightforward. The paper contained a simple mathematical expression, me plus you equals. I looked at him incredulously. Really? That's the best you could come up with? I've used up all my good material on the letters, he admitted. But I'm hoping the answer is still yes. Instead of responding, I pulled out a pen and wrote beneath his equation, me plus you equals us whereas greater than me or you individually, as proven by the strength in numbers theorem, first proposed by Parker Chen, 2024. His smile was bright enough to light up the entire library. God, I love your brain, just my brain, I teased. Every single complicated, challenging, brilliant part of you, he assured me, pulling me close again. The warning bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period, but neither of us moved. We had spent enough time hiding behind words and puzzles and competitions. For now, we just wanted to be still, to exist in this moment between the astronomy and calculus shelves, where all our equations had finally balanced out. News travels fast in high school, and by the end of the day, everyone knew that James Parker and Sophie Chen, Riverside High's most infamous academic rivals, had been caught kissing in the library. The reactions ranged from shocked disbelief to knowing smirks, with Emma and Lily leading the "We Told You So" brigade. I can't believe you didn't tell me you were the one writing the letters, Emma complained to James during our after-school student council meeting. I've been playing matchmaker for weeks, and doing a terrible job of it, James replied, his arm casually draped around my shoulders. Your emergencies were about as subtle as a calculus textbook to the face. Hey, they worked, didn't they? Emma grinned. Though I have to say, Sophie, for someone who aced the SAT math section, you are surprisingly slow at solving this particular puzzle. I felt my cheeks heat up. In my defense, it was a complex problem with multiple variables. Right? Lily chimed in, scrolling through photos on her camera. Because there are so many other calligraphy-trained, mathematically inclined, hopelessly romantic guys at our school who are obsessed with arguing with you. I wasn't obsessed, James protested. I was intellectually invested. You memorized her debate schedule, Lily pointed out, for strategic purposes. You wrote her love letters with mathematical puzzles. That was creative problem solving. You spent 3 hours in the art room practicing calligraphy just to make sure the letters looked perfect? Okay, fine, James laughed, pulling me closer. I was completely, utterly obsessed. Happy now, I turned to look at him, still marveling at how different yet familiar this felt. He was still James, still argumentative, still competitive, still infuriating in the best possible way, but now there was no need to hide the fondness in my eyes when he started passionately defending some ridiculous position. You know, I said, for someone so obsessed with me, you spent an awful lot of time trying to prove me wrong about everything. His eyes sparkled with that familiar competitive gleam. That's because you're never more beautiful than when you're proving me wrong instead. You guys are somehow even more annoying now that you're together, Emma groaned, but she was smiling. The meeting eventually ended, and as we walked out of school hand in hand, I couldn't help but think about how much had changed in just one day. The cream-colored letters were now safely stored in a box in my room, a testament to the unexpected ways love could manifest itself. What are you thinking about? James asked. Noticing my thoughtful expression, I was just wondering. What would have happened if I hadn't figured it out? How long were you planning to write those letters? He stopped walking and turned to face me. I had enough paper for exactly 26 more letters, one for each letter of the alphabet. I figured, if you hadn't figured it out by then, I'd have to admit defeat and find a more direct approach. 26, I repeated, shaking my head. You really do overthink everything, says the girl who spent weeks analyzing the mathematical patterns in love letters. They were very complex patterns. They really weren't. He laughed. Most of them were just excuses to write about how much I loved watching you solve problems. I felt my heart skip at the casual way he said loved, like it was the most natural thing in the world. You know, for someone who claims to prefer direct approaches, you took a pretty roundabout way to tell me how you felt. I needed to find the right formula, he said, pulling me closer, something that would help you see that all our arguments and competitions were just different ways of saying I love your mind and I love how you challenge me and I love. Just kiss me, Parker, I interrupted. Some equations don't need that much explanation. He grinned and complied, and I thought about how wrong I'd been to think that this would fundamentally change who we were. We were still Sophie and James, still competitive, still challenging each other, still driving each other crazy. We just found a better way to channel all that energy. The next morning, I opened my locker to find a new note, written in James's normal handwriting. Asterisk, dear Sophie, asterisk. Asterisk, just because the mystery is solved doesn't mean the story is over. Meet me in the library at lunch. I have a new theory about the optimal strategy for the debate tournament, and I need someone brilliant to prove me wrong. Asterisk, asterisk love, asterisk, asterisk you're not so anonymous admirer asterisk. Asterisk PS, I still think Romeo and Juliet is a comedy. Fight me about it. Asterisk. I smiled, tucking the note into my folder alongside all the others. Some things hadn't changed. We still argued about everything, still competed to be the best, still pushed each other's buttons. But now our debates often ended in kisses instead of frustration, and our competitive spirit had found new, more interesting ways to express itself. Ready for calculus. James appeared beside me, holding out a chai tea latte with extra cinnamon. I've been thinking about your approach to differential equations, and I have some suggestions. Double quotes. Let me guess, I said, taking the drink. You think I'm being too rigid and need to think outside the box? Actually, he smiled, taking my free hand, I think your method is perfect. I just wanted an excuse to talk to you. You don't need excuses anymore. You know. I know. But old habits die hard, and I happen to enjoy our little debates. They're not so little, I pointed out. Yesterday you spent 20 minutes arguing about the proper way to organize the library's reference section, and you found it incredibly attractive, he said confidently. The annoying part was, he wasn't wrong. There was something undeniably appealing about the passionate way he defended his positions, especially when they were completely ridiculous. As we walked to class together, debating the merits of different organizational systems, I thought about how sometimes the best stories aren't about dramatic changes or complete transformations. Sometimes they're about discovering that what you thought was antagonism was actually attraction, that what you saw as rivalry was really romance in disguise. James squeezed my hand as we entered the classroom, and I squeezed back, remembering a line from one of his letters. Every debate is really a love song in disguise. He had been right about that, even if he was still wrong about Romeo and Juliet being a comedy. But that was okay. We had plenty of time to argue about it. And now our arguments had a whole new dimension to explore. After all, the best equations are the ones that leave room for multiple interpretations. And the best love stories are the ones where the characters don't have to change who they are. They just have to recognize what was there all along. Emma likes to tell people that ours is a love story written in mathematical puzzles and debate strategies, spelled out in cream-colored letters and competitive banter. She's not wrong, but I prefer to think of it as a complex, beautiful demonstration of how two seemingly opposing forces can create something greater than the sum of their parts. And if that proof occasionally needs to be validated with kisses between the astronomy and calculus shelves, well, that's just good scientific method.